Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another video. Today in the workshop, we are working on the third of a series of videos that I'm doing called Customized Warhammer 40K. If you've seen the other two, the Thousand Suns Chaos Space Marines and the Tau, these are miniatures that I had offered to paint for a group of guys that are just getting into the hobby, just getting into miniature painting, just getting into gaming in general. They sent me some photographs of models that they had painted, and I offered to take those and paint them up using the techniques that I use and do videos so that they can go back and paint the rest of their armies. Anyway, this time we are painting up my favorite faction, the Orks. The gentleman that wanted his done wants it done up as a Snakebite clan, and he sent me a couple pictures that you can see over here. That's the front, and that's the back. And so we are going to be using those color schemes to paint up a miniature, and we'll see how it goes. Let's get started. All right, so we are going to get started on this guy. Now, the colors that I was given, that the gentleman did the mock-up in, he used a lot of Citadel contrast paints. So when I'm getting ready to do a model with contrast paints, more times than not, I will prime with white because it gives the contrast paints a nice base. So I have gone ahead and primed this guy with Army Painter Matte White. It's one of my favorite. Army Painter is one of my favorite paints to prime with, but you can obviously use any kind of white from a different company or a rattle can from a hardware store, whatever works. So we are going to start from the recessed areas and work out, which typically means the skin first. So I'm going to be painting all of his skin with the base coat. Now the base coat is not a contrast paint, but we're going to be using Warhammer Orruk Flesh. So I'm going to go ahead and just give him a good base coat of Orruk Flesh. And because we are using, we are going to be using some contrast paints, I'm going to try to be careful about where I am putting this paint and try to color within the lines, so to speak. And I also know that from doing the test model for this to get the colors and stuff approved, I'm going to be doing 2 coats so that this covers nicely on the white. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish getting some paint all over him, getting his first coat of green on his skin, and then we will let that dry and we will continue. All right, our 2 coats of Orruk Flesh are done. And I've also went in and cleaned up a couple of overpainting areas. I want to make sure all my lines are nice and crisp because I'm going to start using contrast paints, and I want to make sure that all of those areas have a nice white base as a starting point. So we're going to do a couple of areas on this next pass. We're going to do the inside of the mouth and we're going to do this hide back armor. And the color that was specified for the mouth is Army Painter Speed Paint Slaughter Red. And so I'm just going to get a little bit of that on the brush. And this is going to just be for the inside of the mouth. We're going to do the teeth and the detailed bits later, but I just want to get the recesses of the mouth done. We're not going to be terribly worried about painting over the teeth and stuff because those will obviously get painted over. And that's pretty good. For now, we will clean up the teeth and everything as we go. And now our second color is going to be Citadel Akhelian Green, which is a contrast paint. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And that is going to be, like I said, for the hide armor on his back here. And we're just going to lay that in. We're going to do the top and the underside of it. Now, I'm not terribly worried about overpainting on these bony spines because I know I'm going to be using a layer color, an opaque layer color as the base for those. And that one's done. I like that color. This is a really nice color. So I'm going to let all of this dry. I'm going to go in and make sure I've touched up any areas that are also going to need contrast to make sure they have a nice white base. And then we will move on to the next bit. All right, our two contrast paints are dry. We've done a lot on the upper part of the model. We're going to start working on the bottom part of the model. And so I want to get the pants done and the boots, and then we'll move on to our next bit. So for the pants, we are going to be using Citadel Mournfang Brown. It's a nice, rich brown color that looks like leather. So we're just going to start applying the brown onto the pants. And I want to be careful because a lot of times with orc pants, you'll have rips and holes in them, letting the skin show through. So we want to make sure not to put paint in those holes. And I'm also being a little careful about painting around the belt because I know I'm going to be using a contrast paint on the belt as well as the boots. And so I don't want to have to touch up with the white. So I am just going to get the rest of this Mournfang brown on, and then we'll get the boots done. All right, our pants are done, and we're going to get our base coat on the boots. So for this color, we're going back to our Army Painter Speed paints. We're going to be using grim black. And as I'm painting the black of the boots, I'm going to be careful to not paint the metal parts like the toes, any parts that it's like a metal, because I know I'm going to be using another speed paint for those areas, and I don't want to have to, again, touch up with white. So let's get this put in. All right, our little Snakebite boy is coming along. His boots are done, pants are done. They're all dry. I'm going to add in some of the metal bits now. We're going to do the metal bits on the boots. There is a metal plate on his knee here. We're also going to lay in the base color for the Shuda, and there are some bare metal elements to the choppa that we are going to put in. For those areas, we are going to be using Armor Painter Broadsword Silver, which is another speed paint from Army Painter. So we're going to get that laid in, and I've made sure that all of the spaces that we're going to be putting this in on are white and nice based, no overpainting. So let's get started. Okay, he's looking pretty good. He's getting there. Most of the base coats are in. We have one more pass with one more speed paint. For this one, I'm going to be doing the straps, the pouch, the arm bracelet, gauntlet, things. And then after that, we'll start going in and doing the washes for our primary base coat colors. So for this pass, we're going to be using another Army Painter Speed Paint, Satchel Brown, which is going to be a good contrast to the Mournfang brown that we did for the pants. And once again, this is a speed paint, so we're just going to go in and start laying this in. All right, I lied, I fibbed, I told an untruth. There are a couple more areas that we're going to do before we start doing the washes of the primary colors. The first is the loincloth, and the second is some of the areas on the axe handle, the teeth. Those are all going to be done in Wraithbone, and I want to get those laid in before we start doing the washes. So for the loincloth, we are going to be using Citadel Phalanx Yellow, and this should be a relatively straightforward situation. We're just going to lay in this base coat. This is a really nice yellow, very snakebite. All right, our yellow is in for the loincloth, and now we're going to be using Citadel Wraithbone. And there are a bunch of little areas that we are going to do with Wraithbone. Let's start with the spikes on the back of the armor. We're going to base coat those in Wraithbone and then give them a wash. All right, and our next bit is going to be there's several individual teeth, a couple of earrings here, and then there's one that is hanging off of the Shuda. So we're going to get those. Now let's get this one down here. All right, and then there is a section, this main, or actually the spiky, there's a tooth and a spiky bit on the pommel of the axe that we need to get. All right, and the last bit is this broad area. We're going to do this in another metallic, this middle area, but this broad area here where the teeth of the chain are, that's going to be done in Wraithbone. And I'm also going to be painting in between the teeth to kind of get them, cleaned up a little bit visually. And there we are. Now, I promise, we can start laying in the washes. As I was finishing up that last segment and cleaning up my brush, I realized I forgot to do his teeth. So I have remedied that, and now we are ready to start doing the washes. Okay, we are ready to start on the primary color washes. I'm going to start with the skin. Now, for this color scheme, I didn't want to. The gentleman who gave me this, the test model that he painted had a light colored skin, a light green skin. So normally I would use Citadel Athonian Camoshade for the wash. I'm still going to use this, but I'm going to mix it 50% with Citadel Lahmian Medium. That's going to allow it to keep the color consistent, but it's going to thin it down a bit so it won't be so strong. So I've already mixed it up, and we're just going to go ahead and start laying this in. and it's going to still do a good job of finding the recesses, but it's not going to be quite as dark. And I'm being pretty careful about how I'm putting this on because I don't want this to overlap any of the other primary colors that I've already put on. The skin washes on, and the next area we're going to wash is going to be the pants. Now, for the pants, we're going to be using Citadel Rakeland Flesh Shade. This one has a little bit more red in it compared to like a Agrax Earth Shade, which is a little darker and more intense. So this one I think will be just right for the pants. And I'm being careful not to get any of this wash into the torn areas where the skin is showing through. And that looks pretty good. All right, so the next area we are going to do a wash on is going to be the yellow loincloth. And for that, we are going to be using Seraphim Sepia, which is a lighter, still brown, but it's a lighter wash. So this will be, and it has a warmer quality to it. So I think this is going to be a good match for the yellow. And there we go. That went on very nicely. We're also going to use the Seraphim Sepia for these areas of Wraithbone on the axe and the teeth. I'm going to use a different color for the spikes on the back of the armor, but we're going to get these areas of the axe and the teeth done. And so, as I said, I was going to use a different color for the bony spikes on the back of the armor. And what we're going to use on that is a contrast color, Skeleton Horde. It's a little darker, and I wanted to give those spikes kind of a darker, dirtier color. So we're going to go ahead and get that put on. All right, so our last bit of washing is going to be this big armor plate on his shoulder. The perforated area is going to be a different color, and these large spikes are going to be a different color, but the rest of it stays white. So we're going to wash that in Citadel Soulblight gray, just to give it a little bit of character and make it look not quite so perfectly white. Okay, we have one more thing to do before we start working on the highlighting, and that's going to be these areas on the axe and this perforated bit of metal. And for those areas, we are going to use Balthazar gold. It's going to make a nice contrast with the silver and the other metallics we're using. So I'm going to start with the areas on the axe and just get those laid in. All right, all of that went on well. So the last thing we're going to do before I start doing the highlighting are these two large spiky bits. And for those, we are using Army Painter Slaughter Red Speed Paint. So we're just going to get a little bit of red color on those spikes. We'll let it dry, and then we can move on to the highlighting. All right, that came out nice. One thing I did forget to mention is that I used the Rakeland Flesh shade for the teeth and around the lips. I had forgotten to do that, so that's now done. And we're going to let all this dry, and we'll move on to start doing the highlighting. Okay, we are ready to get started on doing all of our highlighting. Also, by the way, I should let you know that I got a little impatient and I painted the base color on the base, and for that I used Rhinox hide. Now you can use any dark brown color really, but I had Rhinox hide, so that's what I used for it. So we're going to get started on the highlighting, and the first highlighting we're going to do is going to be on the skin, and we're going to do two graduated layers of highlighting. The first one is we're going to go back to our Orruk flesh and lay in some highlighting on larger areas. So it's going to be, you know, areas like the cheekbones and the eyes, or not the eyes, the eyebrows, tops of the ears, all these areas. Now, because the wash darkened the green a little bit, we're using the base color kind of bring back some of the lightness in some areas. And then we're going to use an even lighter color to just do little pinpoint highlights. So I'm going to go ahead and get this done. And then we will come back and do the pinpoint highlights. So our first highlighting pass is laid in and is looking good. So we're going to do just pinpoint highlights, and for that we're going to be using Nurgling green. It's a lighter green, like a sage green almost, and like I said before, we're just going to be hitting the very, very tops of things just to give that nice little extra bit of highlighting. So for instance, on these eyebrows, instead of the whole eyebrow, we're just hitting the very top, just a little bit. And it may not look like much when you look at the individual areas, but when it's all done and you step back and look at the whole model, it's actually a pretty cool effect. All right, so that takes care of the skin. The next area we're going to be highlighting is going to be the pants, and we're going to be bringing back our Mournfang brown. And again, since the wash darkened the overall color, we're just going to bring the Mournfang brown back in and lighten things up a little bit. For the pants, I'm only going to use one. For this guy, I'm only going to use one pass of highlighting. We're just going to get some of the creases and give the whole thing a little bit of dynamics. The skin and the pants are done. Our next area that we're going to highlight is going to be the yellow loincloth. And just like for the skin and for the pants, I'm bringing back the base color, Phalanx yellow, to lighten up just some of the ridges and take away the dark wash color. So this will be pretty straightforward. We're just going to hit these. We're just going to hit these ridges. And these folds. And there you go. That one was quick. Our next area is going to be highlighting all of the areas that we painted in Wraithbone, the spikes on the back, the teeth, these areas of the axe and the pommel. And again, we are bringing the base color back, Wraithbone. And we're just going to do a little highlighting to bring back the pure base color. Now, one of the nice things about doing highlighting is it also gives you a chance to correct some areas you may have made mistakes on. So there's like a little piece of blue right here on this spike, and I'm going to take the opportunity to highlight that just to hide that little bit of blue. And there's another one right here. So we're just going to work our way through all of these Wraithbone areas, and then we will move on to our next highlight color. All right, next up is all of the are going to be all of the gunmetal areas. the bits of the axe, the teeth, the shuta, obviously the metal bits on the boots, the buckles, etc. And for that, we are using Stormhost Silver. It's a very nice, light, silvery color, and it does a really good job for highlighting work. So we'll start off with the blaster, or the shuta. This isn't Star Wars, this is Warhammer. I'm just going to go through and hit the tops of the different elements. He also has a mechanical hand. We're going to get to that as well. So we just have a couple more areas of highlighting to do, but I wanted to take a quick break and put his eyeballs in. We want to make sure that he's got eyes painted. So I'm going to lay in a little bit of white. Now this can be anything really. I mean, you can use craft paint because this is just the base. I'm using white scar, but you can use anything because this is just, like I said, this is just going to be the base for the red. And for the red, we're going back to our Slaughter Red speed paint. And I'm just going to lay that right over the white. So let's get that put in. Good. So he can see now. He's actually got eyes. So we have just a couple more areas to do our highlighting on. One of them is going to be all these areas where we did the Balthazar gold, and then a little bit of highlighting on the white area, and then we will move on to texturing the base and he'll be finished. So for the Balthazar gold areas, we're going to highlight using Liberator Gold. It's going to be a really nice complement to that Balthazar. So we're just going to go in and do some very discreet. You don't need to do a lot with this particular combination because the Liberator Gold is really bright and shiny and it'll punch out very nicely. So I tend to just hit the corners and maybe a couple areas in here just to bring it in. And that looks good. So let's go over to the axe. And again, we're just going to hit some areas along the edges and these high points on the cylinders. A little goes a long way. All right, so I'm pretty pleased with how this guy came out. So I did one last look around just to make sure that he was all finished, because you never know, you may miss a little bit here and there. And I did a couple of extra things. I grabbed some Abaddon Black and hit the very end of his shooter here, just so that it kind of looks like it's a a tube, a muzzle. Um, Obviously, for this, you can use any kind of black you've got on hand, but I have Abaddon Black and I use that. Also, there was a spike on his gauntlet or his bracelet here that I had not done, and so I went back in with our Broadsword Silver speed paint and added that. So he is done, and we are ready to get the base done and then give him a top coat. So for the bases, in my previous, you may have seen in my previous videos, for these guys, I'm texturing the top of the base and I'm painting the ring black. This is personal decision. The gentleman that I had done the other two for liked that look, and so I'm going to just be texturing the top and leaving the ring as a solid black color. So for the texture, I am using AK Terrain's Dark Earth, and I'm just going to, as you can see, it's kind of like a paste, and I'm just grabbing a good sized brush, and we are going to texture. We're just going to dab this texture all along the top here. And make sure you don't want to draw the brush as you would if you were painting. You kind of want to just dab it and stipple it, because you want to make sure that this has got some nice texture to it when it dries. You don't want it to be smooth. Because once it's dry, we're going to do a wash and a dry brush on top of it to make it look really cool. So we're going to get all of this put in. And this looks pretty good. I'm also not, obviously, I'm not texturing. I'm not trying not to put any texture on the ring because that's going to be a different color. So that's all in. We're going to let that dry, and then we will come back and do the wash and the dry brushing. So I just finished putting the texture on the base, and I remembered that I had forgotten to do the highlighting for the white areas. No problem. We will get that taken care of. So we're just going to hit that with white scar, and we're just going to be doing some of the edges. And again, this is just to help the piece look a little bit more dynamic with some dark and light areas. And if you have any cracks in the armor, those can be highlighted. That makes it look pretty cool. And so there we go. We've got some of the edges done and some of the rivets and the spikes and bits. And now we are ready to let the texturing dry. And then once that's done, we will finish it up. The base texturing is dry, and now it's time to put our wash on. So for our wash, we are going to be using Agrax Earth Shade. It's still a nice brown, but it's a little bit darker than this texture. So that will make a good wash for the darker areas. And then we're going to go over and do 2 passes with different highlighting colors, and then paint the ring, and then we'll be done. So here's our wash. That's laid in nicely, easy peasy. We're going to let that dry and then come back and do our highlighting. Our texture is dry and it's time to finish this guy up. So we're going to do 2 highlight passes to gradually lighten the color. Our first pass is going to be with Bane Blade Brown. I'm going to get my small round dry brush and we're going to get a load of paint on here and then wipe off most of it. And then we're just going to go through here with a light pressure and just draw along the texture to get some color on there. We don't want to press too hard because we don't want to press all the way into the recesses. That's what the wash was for. But we're going to go through here and lighten this up a bit. And it doesn't have to be huge, just subtle. We just want to hit the peaks. That looks pretty good. And now we're going to, for our second highlight, we're going to go back to Wraithbone. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to load up our brush, get most of it off. The difference being with this pass, we want to go even lighter on the pressure. So just as you can see there, just a little bit of a contrast to the Bane Blade Brown. And there we go. That looks pretty good. All right, I'm going to take this guy off. So for the last, before we put, we're going to put a little bit of texture, well, not texturing, but grass or, terrain effects on there. But the last thing we're going to do before that is take our Abaddon or Abaddon. I think I've been pronouncing it wrong. Anyway, our black and go around the ring just to give it a nice finished look. We're just going to go right up to the top. And once this is done, I'm going to let it dry and we're going to put a little bit of cool grass or stones or something on there and he will be done. All right, everything is dry on the base. The last thing we're going to do is add a little bit of texturized effects to the base to give it some fun. I have a whole bunch of these different kinds of grasses. I like using these because they're super easy to do and it gives it a nice look. So all we're going to do is take a little bit of white PVA glue. I'll probably put a couple down here just to give it some interest, and then we just lay in a little bit of glue and then just grab these off the card and lay them in there. And that is it. We're going to let those dry, give it a clear satin top coat, and he is ready to get on the table. All done. Our 2 Snakebite boys are ready to go out and kick some butt. Hey there. Thanks for watching this video. I just wanted to take an extra moment to say it was a real pleasure getting contacted by this group and helping a bunch of brand new players getting into the hobby. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with the rest of their armies based on the miniatures that I did for them. And with this last orc video paint job, I was inspired to do some videos on my orc army. I've been playing orcs since, oh gosh, second edition, I think, of Warhammer 40K. So I may do some videos based on the paint jobs I do for my orc boys. So that's something to look forward to. Take care. Bye bye.